So thank you very much, and welcome to Echoing Whispers. And with that, I am taking my phone out to introduce you to the first actual piece of content of this launch event, which will be a reading of a tale about a sand crab. And to do this reading, we are privileged to have Huỳnh right here. So she's a Vietnamese German actress, actor, writer. She has 14 years of experience. If you enjoy what you hear today, you can see her very soon in Blue Season, which is a British Vietnamese police crime drama, which will be on Galaxy Play this July. And she's also working on her first book, which is called The Element Master. Thank you, Huỳnh.
Just gonna sit down then. Right, hello everyone. Right. Long ago, there lived an old man named Da Giang. He and his wife lived alone, without the joyful fruit of children. In their peaceful garden, a pair of serpents had made their nest in a small den. Da Giang and his wife would see the two reptiles slinking in and out of their home during their hours working in the sun. One day, the husband serpent crawled out of the den alone. Da Giang's curiosity prompted him to look inside, where he saw the wife serpent all curled up into a bundle. She had recently shedded her skin. Her body remained fragile and could barely move. After a long while, the husband serpent returned home with a frog in his mouth and fed it to his fragile wife. Before long, it was the wife serpent who ventured out of the den alone. It was her husband's turn to molt. He lay silently beside his grey old skin. After a while, the wife returned, followed by another male serpent, bigger and more fearsome. Da Giang saw the two of them stop in front of the den and affectionately intertwine their limpless bodies together. Later on, the male serpent was seen leaving alone. Da Giang knew right away what this male serpent was seeking to do. What an eyesore, he deemed. The man wanted to kill that treacherous male snake on behalf of the ailing husband serpent. He pulled back an arrow and aimed at the male serpent with the intention of death by a single blow. But to his dismay, the arrow went astray and hit his wife's serpent's head instead, instantaneously killing her. The male snake was frightened out of his wits and scrambled off. Da Giang felt pity for the reptiles, but anger drove him home. From then on, he paid no more mind to the snake's den. After a fortnight, Da Giang recounted the story to his wife whilst lying in a hammock. He was humorously confessing what he saw and did when there came a hissing sound from the house's rain gutter. Da Giang and his wife were startled when they found a humongous king cobra. His tail looped around the ceiling beams, and his head hovered down to where Da Giang was resting. In his mouth was a pearl. Da Giang took the pearl, and suddenly he could hear the serpent talk. I owe you a debt that cannot be repaid. You are my savior whom I had mistaken to be my foe. I have waited in this gutter for days on end for a chance to snap at you and take your life as an act of vengeance on my deceased wife. But having heard your story loud and clear, I know I was wrong. Please take this pearl as a symbol of my gratitude. Wear it, and you shall be able to hear and understand all earthly bliss. From astonishment to excitement, Da Giang accepted the precious pearl. From that day on, he was never seen without this gift from the serpent. One day, while Da Giang was picking vegetables, a murder of crows came and landed on some areca branches. They chattered and chortled gleefully. When Da Giang asked, they told him, on the southern mountain, a goat was mauled by a tiger. Retrieve the meat to dine, but remember to save us the intestines. Curious and eager to see if the crow's words were true, Da Giang climbed the mountain and saw the dying goat. Cutting up some meat, he skewered the pieces onto a stick and brought it home. At home, he generously shared a juicy piece of information with his neighbors and told them the same thing the crows had told him, to leave the intestines. But little did he know the news spread like wildfire, and the hamlet all flocked to the southern mountain for a chance of delicious goat meat. Inevitably, there was nothing left for the murder of crows. When there were no intestines to be found, The crows accused Da Zhang of deceit and besieged his garden to demand retribution. Da Zhang realized his neighbors had done him wrong and made him turn back on his words to the crows. He tried to explain himself, but the ravenous winged mob would not listen and continued to cuss him out of all directions. Flustered and angry, Da Zhang took out his bow and arrows and fired aimless, frantic shots at the blackbirds, just to scare them off. But the crows took offense and believed that Da Zhang had repaid their kindness with cruelty. They seized one of the arrows with Da Zhang's name engraved on the nock and swore revenge. Whilst they were flying over a river, the crows spotted a human corpse floating and came up with a devious plan. They took the engraved arrow and jammed it into the corpse's pharynx. When the corpse was found, the local mandarin came to make a report, saw the arrow, immediately guessed that Da Zhang was the culprit, and thus ordered soldiers to arrest him and put him in prison. Da Zhang was suddenly arrested. He relentlessly pleaded innocent, but the arrow was tangible, damning evidence that rendered his words weak and unconvincing. So into the stocks he went. However, he still insisted on retrial. Hearing this, the mandarin sent soldiers to take him back to the capital for the king to judge.
Hi, my name is Tue. So I've been producing this exhibition and getting these events together. First of all, I just want to say thank you, Kim, for doing that reading. Just as you have heard, it's not finished, obviously, and the reason why we did that is because you can buy the books outside and finish the story yourselves. So, we've just heard the tale of the sand crab, a story about loss, persistence, transformation, and impossible tasks. It feels fitting because bringing Vietnamese folktales into English and into a museum has sometimes felt like its own impossible task. Today, that's what I want to explore, how this project came to life, from story to book to painting to exhibition. So before that, welcome all latecomers. Thank you for coming. Hello. And thank you everyone for joining us. I know it's a really sunny afternoon, but there is food afterwards. So just to let you know, if you've booked with us, please come and see myself or Anne for your token to go into the restaurant for food and drinks. And we might have a few spare because some people have decided not to turn up because they want a suntan or something. Okay, so first let's give a warm welcome to Kim, Tran and Jeet. Woo! So I'm going to just do a quick summary of who these brilliant people are. Kim Tran is the co-founder of Major Books and the driving force behind Treasury of Vietnamese Folktales. Passionate about preserving and sharing Vietnamese literary heritage, she has spent the last several years bringing these stories to new audiences through translation, publishing, and cultural exchange. Jeet is one of Vietnam's most celebrated contemporary illustrators. Known for his richly imaginative visual worlds, he combines traditional Vietnamese artistic influences with contemporary illustrations. His paintings for Treasury of Vietnamese Folktales reimagine these stories for a new generation of readers and audiences. Let's give him another clap. So I am deeply honoured to be sitting here with you two because I've seen this project in so many different phases, in all the Arts Council apps, British Council apps to make this alive. And I think it's really powerful that you've brought Vietnamese folktales into this kind of space and into the UK in your disciplines. And I was thinking, as a child, I don't remember being told a Vietnamese folktale. So this is the first time I encountered it. And I think all of us are now going into our memory bank. What was the first folktale that we were told as a child? So on that note, Kim, as a child, what was the first folktale that you heard, and could you tell us about it?
As a child, the first folktale I heard was a story called Tam Cam, which is often considered the Vietnamese version of Cinderella. So as we know, folktales are around the world, and it's a kind of Cinder story trope that exists in around 500 versions all around the world. Actually, I watched Cinderella first, and then I read the story. I was told the story actually, and I thought, hang on a minute, these are really similar, but our story is way cooler. Because essentially, if you don't know, our version of Cinderella has reincarnation, like horrendous murder plot, you know, like attempted changelings. There's and then a horrendous vengeance in the end with cannibalism in there as well. So if you are in for a taste of a bit of gore, please do give it a go.
I love that you brought that up. That was so out of the whole collection, that was one of my favorites that came up. And I also put a bid into Arts Council. Hey, we need to adapt this for stage. And guess what? Got the grant, which means that we are going to adapt that particular folktale for stage. So please watch out. And Kim's right, it is a horror gore fest. So the Vietnamese know how to adapt those folktales. Thank you for sharing that. So, you know, we've talked about Nguyen Dong Chi, and I just want to highlight a little bit more of his work and why you chose to select his collection of folktales to bring to the UK.
So essentially, you know, folktales don't have an author, right? But we still wanted to honor his work by, you know, we actually work with family, we acquired the rights to his retelling of the works, because I think it is really important. You know, storytelling is, you know, after all, like he was a folklorist. He was an ethnographer. He was someone who spent his entire life on the collection, research, and preservation of folktales. He also had another body of work on myth, legends, strange tales from the South, but his retelling is not only captures the essence of the story. He selected through all the retelling versions, and he decided to compose what he thinks is the version that best showcases what he considers to be a distinctive Vietnamese essence. In the tales, his retelling are both, you know, they're funny. They're not just authentic, but they're funny. They have humor. They have wit. They have songs. They have poetry in them. So I really think that they are. And after all, like in Vietnam, his version is the most widely told. So I really wanted to share that with audiences of the West.
Thank you. And I love the glint in your eye when you're talking about it. It's so much passion and love for it, which I think is so important because it's really carried through the work that you've brought here. And I'd love to just focus a little bit more about just folktales in general, because we've just heard Sand Crab. And what's interesting that it's not only Vietnamese, and I think what we need to highlight is that, yes, this is very through the Vietnamese lens, and, you know, we've curated it, we've worked with lots of Vietnamese creatives and artists, but I think we are all familiar with folktales, myths and legends, which is a fascinating part of our lives in storytelling. So I'd love to hear your point of view in terms of sorry, I've jumped a little bit. There's just so many variations, and like, what do you think folktales tell us about different cultures, and what do they have in common?
I think, you know, as I briefly mentioned the Cinder trope story earlier, I think, you know, folklore and folklore study is an entire discipline that, you know, I am definitely not someone who can confidently discuss what is a folklore and why are the stories so similar. You know, there's so many theories around it. Some scholars before have believed that it all came from one stories, but others really think about the study of structuralism and the fact that people resonate to certain similar story tropes. So I have no authority to say what is the answer, but I do think that at its heart, Nguyễn Đồng Chi really showcased in his work that that these stories he compiled a long etymology of like where he thinks of all the different versions of the stories, where he think they came from, and I think he really showcased that is a constant process of exchange, and it is an oral tradition, and each version reflects certain motifs, certain ways of belief, in distinctive beliefs in different locality. But at its heart, the reason why we love listening to them is because we love storytelling. We people are fascinated by just good story. I think at its heart we're all human. So.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you so much. I'm going to move on to Jeet, which, like I said, an honour to be in both your presence, but Jeet has travelled all the way from Vietnam to be here to see this come to life. And I've honestly been so treasured to have met him in Vietnam twice, to see his practice. And I remember the first meeting in a cafe when you introduced us, I was like, I've got to bring this to the UK. It's going to happen. And you're here. And it's amazing. It's like, when you just see a process and it comes together, it's like, wow. So I just really want to give, I know it's really cheesy, but I'm in a cheesy mood. It's just to give Jeet another applause for his brilliant work before we start. Yeah. So do you want to pass the mic to him? So just bear in mind, like English isn't his first language, so there might be points where Kim may translate. But I've made the questions as simple as I can. Yes, get ready. Okay.
Can I have one as well, please?
So, just to highlight, I just want to say that Jeet has made 50 illustrations. In the exhibition space, you only see 28 of them because of the space. But I'd love to hear from you, Jeet. Like, when Kim first approached you, what excited you about this project?
Ok, và lần đầu tiên mà khi mà tôi được gửi cho bản thảo thì nó là một sự đùng lúc. Vì đùng lúc là khi lúc đấy là tôi đang có nhiều hứng thú với các cái vật liệu hay là chất liệu vẽ và họa phẩm như là giấy washi, màu nước và những cái hoa văn trên gốm sứ của trà wan, là những cái bát matcha, cũng như là tranh sơn mài của Việt Nam và các cái hình vẽ ở trên rốn nước.
So when I first received the materials, it was a right moment in time when I was really interested in certain materials and techniques, such as washi paper, wash color, Vietnamese lacquer painting, and illustrations on water puppetry. Also, pottery, chawan pottery, matcha bowls, etc.
Và khi mà đọc bản thảo thì nói chung là những cái hình ảnh nó tự hiện lên và khiến cho tôi cảm thấy là muốn đây là một cái cơ hội hiếm có để một là ứng dụng những cái kỹ thuật vẽ mà tôi đang có, và nó sẽ giúp tôi phát triển một cái kỹ thuật mới mà trước nay tôi chưa bao giờ sử dụng. Và hai là đây cũng là một cơ hội để nói chung là tôi cũng không ngờ là lại có cơ hội biết đến những cái câu chuyện cổ tích mà trước nay tôi không hề biết nó có tồn tại ở Việt Nam.
So when I read the stories, the images just start coming to my head, and I thought this is a rare opportunity for me to first utilize the techniques and skill set that I have in order to both showcase them and to develop new skills that I potentially could develop, and secondly to come across stories, Vietnamese folktales that I have never even heard of.
And that comes into my next question, actually, because you're talking about folktales that you've never heard of, but were there any in these particular 11 that you heard as a child, or are there any others that you've heard that hasn't been part of this series? And would you tell us about it?
Những câu chuyện mà anh đã có câu chuyện nào mà anh được nghe lúc bé, hoặc là câu chuyện nào mà anh có ấn tượng?
Khi còn bé thì tôi sẽ được nghe nhiều câu chuyện, chủ yếu là mẹ kể, là điển hình là Thánh Gióng và Sơn Tinh Thủy Tinh thì sẽ là ghi nhớ nhất. Ngoài ra thì tất nhiên là có Tấm Cám. Tấm Cám phiên bản đấy thì lại là một cái phiên bản nó không khủng khiếp như là phiên bản trong sách. Mãi về sau khi lớn rồi tôi mới biết là có một cái phiên bản như vậy. Đó, ngoài ra thì cũng có những cái chuyện khác mà như là Thạch Xanh thì là điển hình cũng rất là hay nghe. Và ngoài ra còn có một chuyện là tôi nghĩ nó là chuyện cổ tích đến từ Trung Quốc, là về Mã Lương, là bạn biết cái chuyện đó, thì là về một cái anh chàng này có một cây bút thần và vẽ cái gì thì nó biến thành hiện thực. Đó là những cái câu chuyện mà tôi rất là nhớ từ khi còn bé.
When I was a child, I was told many stories, mostly by my mum. Of course, the stories that I remember most were Saint Zdũng, the battle between the mountain god and the water god. Of course, Tấm Cám, but the version of Tấm Cám I heard was much less gruesome than this. Only after I became older that I learned that there was such a horrendous version of the story. Also, stories like Thạch Xanh, which is a story about a young hunter who got a young kind hunter who got tricked by his evil brother, but afterwards receive rewards. And also a story which I presume I mean him, which I presume was from China. It's a story. Mã Lương is a guy with a magic pen which everything he drew came to life. Those are the stories there.
Thank you so much. Everyone needs to read Tấm Cám. It's embedded in everyone. So again, like meeting you in Vietnam and understanding your process, you've talked a little bit about it, and going through the workshop of how you create things, I'd love to understand, when you hear a folktale, what image comes to your mind?
Khi anh nghe chuyện cổ tích thì hình ảnh gì xuất hiện trong đầu anh?
Nếu như mà bây giờ nói đến chuyện cổ tích thì hình ảnh hiện lên trong đầu tôi là một cái thế giới mà nó gây tò mò, có nhiều điều kỳ diệu mà tôi muốn khám phá ở trong đó, và kích thích cái trí tưởng tượng cũng như là cái bản năng sáng tạo, và nó khiến cho tôi muốn vẽ. Đó là những cái mà nếu như mà nhắc đến cổ tích vào thời điểm này thì tôi nghĩ như vậy.
If you mention folktales at this point in time, then the image that comes into my mind is a world that is full of curiosity, is a world full of magic and possibilities that encourage your imagination, that I want to find out things, I want to discover things in there, and it makes me want to draw.
I really love your answers, thank you. So I want to, again, because your process is so magical to me anyway, and I think people start to learn a little bit more about it. But your work draws on very traditional Vietnamese visual languages, and I'd love for you to just talk us through the materials or techniques that you felt that were important to you when you were creating these paintings. And before you translate that, I just want to point out to some of the paintings here. I'm just going to hold up my favorite. So we have 6 paintings here that Jeet has retouched, and these are exclusive, I'm probably going to say this, a Geekly prints, which he has personally put some finishing touches on himself, and they're up for auction, all starting at £50. And if you follow at Major Books UK on Instagram, we'll give you details on how you can actually bid on them, and the winner will be announced at the end of the exhibition. But please come and have a look, these are beautiful. This is actually in the exhibition, but when you look inside the painting, I say inside, you'll see so many details that you can't see from a distance. And over to you.
Như đã nói ban đầu thì là kỹ thuật vẽ nó đã bắt đầu từ khi nó đến đúng lúc khi tôi đang hứng thú về cái sử dụng các họa phẩm như giấy washi, màu wash. Và giấy washi thì có một cái hiện tượng rất là hay, đó là nó không giống như là giấy vẽ màu nước phương Tây, đấy là nó chịu nước, nó không có một bề mặt để nước và màu có thể giữ ổn định trên bề mặt, mà nó sẽ hút và thấm hút màu vào trong. Đây là cái lý do khiến cho sau khi màu wash đặt lên nó sẽ tạo ra những hiệu ứng lấm tấm và có một cái sự tương đồng với các cái hoa văn ở trên gốm sứ hay sơn mài. Thời là vậy.
So, as I mentioned earlier, it was at a time when I was very interested in certain tools, such as washi paper and wash color. With washi paper, it's a very interesting type of paper because unlike Western paper, it has a surface that absorbs a lot of liquid, absorbs a lot of water. So when you use color on it, the paper absorbs the color and creates the effects, certain effects such as certain kind of dotting or certain patterns that are really similar to patterns on pottery.
Và ngoài ra thì trong cái thời điểm này tôi cũng đang sử dụng mực sư mi. Nó là một loại mực thủy mặc. Và sau khi tráng một lớp lên trên bề mặt của giấy washi thì nó sẽ tạo thành một lớp màu đen bóng. Và nếu như màu wash được đặt lên trên cái lớp màu đen này sẽ tạo ra một cái hiệu ứng lại giống như tranh sơn mài ở Việt Nam.
And at that time, I was using a type of ink called sumi ink. It's a type of like ink that's used in Chinese ink washer. Sumi
ink.
Sumi ink. And with this ink, it has an incredible effect where once you draw it on washi paper and then you put wash color on top, it creates a pattern. Cái từ anh dùng là gì? Sau khi đặt màu wash lên thì nó sẽ tạo ra một hiệu ứng.
Tạo ra hiệu ứng giống như là sơn mài.
It creates an effect that is extremely similar to Vietnamese lacquer painting.
Thì ý tưởng khi nảy ra trong lúc mà vẽ mà nhận được bản thảo đó là những hình ảnh hiện ra trong tôi giống như là những cái hiện vật cổ xưa kể về những cái câu chuyện, mà tức là tôi muốn tạo ra một cái thế giới như thể là nó là có thật, và ngày nay người ta bắt đầu lần theo những cái hiện vật này để hiểu được là trong đó cái câu chuyện đó là gì.
An idea came to my mind, which is to depict these stories on broken pieces of antiques, as if these stories were real. This came from a very real world where people can look at these fragments and discover the world that once was.
Tất nhiên là khi mà nghĩ về tranh minh họa thì ta nghĩ là nó có thể là một cái giúp cho làm minh sáng hơn những cái câu chuyện ngôn ngữ bằng việc sử dụng hình vẽ. Nhưng ở đây thì tôi trong lúc vẽ, thật ra đây không phải là một ý tưởng đến từ ban đầu mà nó hiện ra dần trong cái quá trình sáng tác, và nó giống như là có một cái sự tương tác qua lại, là bây giờ ta sẽ tò mò về một cái hình ảnh và ta bắt đầu đọc truyện để biết được là cái hình ảnh trong những cái hiện vật đó nó đang kể câu chuyện gì, ý nghĩa của nó là gì.
So when people think of illustrations normally, people think of just images that attempts to make clear what is in the story. But this was not an idea that I originally had. This came when, as I was drawing, as I started drawing, certain images start to appear, and I also have to go back to the story to explore what these images are. So it's an interaction between the two.
Còn ngoài ra thì có một cái kỹ thuật mà ta có thể thấy trong bức tranh dã tràng mà Tuyết vừa đưa cho mọi người xem, thì cái bức đấy là bức tranh mà điển hình cho cái cách vẽ khi sử dụng giấy washi. Đó là tôi thấm ướt bề mặt của giấy và sau đấy cứ thả màu lên. Ban đầu tôi không biết bức tranh đấy nó sẽ về câu chuyện nào, nhưng mà cái quá trình hình vẽ, những cái mảng màu tự hiện lên và biến đổi trên bề mặt giấy, nó gợi ý cho tôi là nó thuộc về câu chuyện nào, nó thuộc về nhân vật nào.
The picture that Tuyết has just shown earlier on about the tail of the sand crab is a perfect example of this technique where I make the surface of washi paper wet and then I started putting colors on top. As the color appears, it starts to tell me which story this painting will belong to, which character this painting will belong to.
I'm going to bid on this one. I feel like you can't really understand the process until you do it yourself. And Jeet did a workshop with me when I was in Vietnam and I failed miserably. And it's such a beautiful technique. And we do have 2 workshops where Jeet will be leading adults into how he creates the images that he's created in your own sort of lens. And we have an adult one, and then we also have a children's one. So if you've got any children and you haven't had the chance to book the adult one, then join the children one because you can bring your child to it and also you can enjoy it yourself. I am going to open this up to questions after a couple more with these guys from me. So if you've got any thoughts that you'd like to share, we will have the space to do so. So Kim, and thank you so much for sharing that. It was just intense. I love it. Okay, so Kim, what do you hope audiences leave knowing about Vietnam that they perhaps didn't know before they walked into this space?
What do I hope people know about Vietnam? That we have incredible artists and incredible stories. No, but when I made this book in mind, the first audience I wanted to make make this for are children of my friends my friends who might be 2nd, 3rd generation immigrants in the UK, and their children who are growing up with Brothers Grimm, with Disney, which is none of their fault. It's just simply because there is an absence of these stories available over here. I really wish, and I also know about the desire to reconnect with their cultural heritage. People like you, for example, who might have the language barrier to access these stories, and they are the people I wanted to dedicate this to first. I really want them to leave feeling proud, to leave knowing that we have a rich cultural heritage that is absolutely on par and comparable to the Brothers Grimm's, the Andersen, the Disney of the world. And to others, I just wish they enjoy the exhibition. I just wish they enjoy the story. And be a little bit more curious about what Vietnamese literature has to offer.
I feel like I'm really emotional when you say that because it's everything you said. Like this, I think a lot of British Vietnamese here who works in the sort of creative sector that's all we want really. Is that Vietnam is really rich of stories, artists, and yeah, it's really beautiful. Thank you. And then Jeet, I'd love. I mean, it's going to be a really tough question, but out of all of the artwork in the exhibition, which feels the most personal to you?
Bức nào trong tất cả các bức mà anh cảm thấy thích nhất hay
Tôi không có bức nào là bức thích nhất. Nhưng mà nếu như nói về câu chuyện thì nếu như mà phức tạp nhất và khó nhất để thể hiện thì đó là Tấm Cám. Tấm Cám là chuyện mà mang lại cho tôi nhiều cái sự tiến bộ trong kỹ thuật vẽ. Và
Sorry, just gonna start. So I don't have a favorite painting, but if I have to choose which set of paintings were the most complex to present, then it would be Tâm Cảm. It's a story that by drawing it encouraged me to grow the most.
Câu chuyện thì Tấm Cám là một cái câu chuyện mà nhân vật chính có nhiều sự chuyển biến và có những cái tương phản giữa những cái lúc mà cô ấy xuất hiện trong những lần đầu tiên và sau đó. Thì cách thể hiện nó khó ở đâu thì là ở đây là một là cái con cá bống trong chuyện thì xưa nay là tôi cũng không biết con cá bống nó trông như thế nào, nhưng mà ngày nay thì tôi bắt đầu chúng ta có internet và tôi có thể tìm được cái con cá bống nó trông thế nào. Và cái con cá bống tôi lựa chọn thì nó là cá bống hoa. Và ngoài ra quên.
Sorry, it's going to be a complex answer. So, in terms of why it is difficult, is because this story, the protagonist Tâm, is a character with a lot of transformation, and there's a lot of contrast from in her, in the way she appears from the first time she appears to the last time she appears. And other aspects of why this is difficult is, for example, the goby fish, which is the character in the story. This goby fish, I have no idea how it looks like, but thanks to I've never seen it before, but thanks to the internet, now I can look up how a goby looks like. And the goby that I depicted here is a type of goby. I will roughly translate the name as flower pattern goby. I found it, how it looks like, and I decided to draw it.
Ngoài ra thì là về hình ảnh của cô Tấm thì trước nay trong những cái cuốn sách dành cho thiếu nhi thì cô Tấm thường được vẽ khá là thon thả, đẹp, cao và một cái diện mạo giống như là cô tiên. Nhưng mà tôi nghĩ là cô Tấm thì là một cái cô mà phải lao động vất vả, cho nên thường là tôi đã vẽ cô ấy có cái bàn tay to như thế khi mà cô ấy đưa lên mặt. Và những cái hình ảnh mà tôi tìm được ở trên internet thì thông thường mặt của những cô gái người Việt Nam ngày xưa thì khá tròn, nên đây là cái lý do tôi đã vẽ cô ấy trông như thế này.
And then in terms of depicting the protagonist, traditionally other illustrations of Tâm that I've found always depict her to be somewhat fairy-like, very tall, very slim, very fair, very delicate, which I think doesn't make sense because she's someone who had to work very hard, like Cinderella. So I think that she must be someone with quite big hands. So that's why I've drawn her hand rather large. And I found pictures of Vietnamese women back in the day, they all have quite round features. So that's why I've drawn her like that.
Trong câu chuyện thì sẽ xuất hiện các cái nhân vật mà hiện diện của họ sẽ có cái sự thiện và ác tương đối rõ. Ví dụ như là ở đây không có ví dụ, nhưng khi tôi vẽ sự so sánh giữa Tấm và Cám thì Tấm sẽ được bao quanh bởi một số những cái cây cỏ và nó có hình tròn và rộng bản. Gương mặt của Tấm thì sẽ đừng nhìn thấy đủ cả hai mắt về chính diện, còn Cám thì đứng đằng sau bên cạnh một cái cây chuối, và cái cây chuối nó sẽ có một cái hình dạng nó nguy hiểm hơn, và cái khuôn mặt của Cám thì cũng chỉ nhìn thấy một góc 1/2, chỉ nhìn thấy một con mắt, và tay của cô ấy cũng trông đáng sợ hơn.
Yeah. And in the story there are characters that represent good and evil quite clearly. So that's why there's no example here, but in the exhibition you can see when I draw the protagonist, surrounding her, framing her will be natures and trees that have quite round, quite open feature. The way she is drawn, we'll also see her, like we'll also be able to see her from the front. She'll have a front-on look. You can see both of her eyes. Whereas in contrast, her stepsister, the kind of nature that frames her, the banana tree that I draw of, all have a kind of dangerous air to them. They look warped. Even the position of her hands all evokes a sense of evil and danger. She's also not seen looking front on. You can only see her from a side on, from a profile view, and you can only see one of her eyes.
Trong tác phẩm thì cũng có một số cảnh nó liên quan đến cảnh sát hại của mụ dì ghẻ khi mà chặt cây cau để giết Tấm. Thì cái cảnh này là một cảnh tôi cũng phải nghĩ, vì không muốn đưa vào trong nó quá rõ ràng đối với chuyện cho trẻ con. Nên đây cũng là một sự lựa chọn khi mà tôi vẽ cảnh cây cau bị chém thành các mảnh một cách ẩn dụ. Ngoài ra, xin lỗi.
And in the story, there's a scene where there's a scene where the protagonist climbs up on a betel tree, and this is where she gets murdered for the first time. They chop the tree, and then she dies. But I did not want to depict this so straight on. So I had to think a lot about how to depict this image, and that's what I chose. I chose to paint a picture of a fragmented tree that showcased this metaphorically.
Một bức tranh mà tôi yêu thích nhất là khi Tấm đi dự dạ hội. Cô ấy ngồi trên lưng một con ngựa và mẹ con nhà Cám thì nằm ở bên dưới. Thì Tấm ở đây cũng được nhìn thấy đủ cả hai mắt, gương mặt chính diện, và với một cái bộ trang phục đẹp đẽ do bụt ban cho. Cô ấy ở trên một cây cầu trắng cao. Bức tranh này các bạn có thể nhìn thấy ở bên ngoài. Và vị trí của cô ấy cao hơn mọi người. Nhưng với cái phong thái mà cô ấy vẫn còn khá là bẽn lẽn, và cái tay thì nó vẫn còn có phần căng thẳng, lúng túng, và vai thì hơi gồng lên. Còn mẹ con nhà Cám thì ở bên dưới vẫn là được nhìn thấy chỉ một góc 1/2 và một con mắt, và trông cơ thể của họ khùng khoằm hơn ở bên dưới.
Anh có nói tiếp không?
Sau đó anh sẽ nói đến con ngựa.
Okay. A painting that I particularly like was a scene where Tấm was going to the party. This is a scene where, she is seen in her beautiful outfit on a horse. She's positioned higher than all the other characters, but she is still in her first presentation, and in her hand positioning, you can still see she's still a bit shy. She's still a bit reserved. The stepmother and stepsister are seen below, still in the usual side profile, with only one eye being seen in a very warped figure.
Trong bức tranh này thì tôi cũng có một cái nhân vật mà tôi yêu thích khi mà vẽ, đấy là con ngựa hồng mà Tấm cưỡi trên lưng. Thì con ngựa hồng này được ban cho bởi bụt, và cái con ngựa đó khi mà bạn nhìn vào bức tranh thì bạn sẽ thấy là nó nhìn thẳng vào ta. Và bởi vì là nó nói lên cho ta biết là cái con ngựa này nó không thuộc về cái mảnh cổ vật đó, nó không thuộc về cái bức tranh hay cái thế giới ở trong đó, nó thuộc về bên ngoài hay là ở đâu đấy sâu xa hơn. Đây là ban đầu tôi cũng không có cái ý tưởng về việc thể hiện như vậy, nhưng mà trong lúc sáng tác thì nó tự động hiện ra như thế.
And in this painting, which you can see outside, there is she's riding on top of a horse. This horse was given to her by the Buddha. And if you look at the horse, you'll see that it's actually looking directly at you. All the other characters are not looking at you, but this horse is, which signifies to me that this horse does not belong to the world of the painting. It does not belong to the world of this fragment of antique. It belongs to a world maybe the outside world, or a world that is, or a realm that is much deeper. And this did not come to me. This was not what I intended. It just simply came to me as I was drawing.
I feel like we're really selling this particular one, and I'm really excited about it. So thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like I'd love to open the floor for any questions from our visitors. Just want to raise your hands. Yeah.
Jeet won the Carnegie Medal for Illustration in 2023. Congratulations. And I wonder whether, when he won it, he said that he'd always wanted to make comics as a child. And this is such a long way from comics. How does he feel about this? Does he love comics? Is it still a kind of medium that he loves?
Trước tiên là chị ấy, là bác ấy chúc mừng anh vì đã giành huân chương minh họa Carnegie vào năm 2023. Và đây đã là một quá trình thật là dài. Khi trước thì anh nói là anh rất thích truyện tranh, và anh còn thế bây giờ anh còn thích truyện tranh hay không? Và đấy còn là một cái công cụ sáng tác mà anh nghĩ thế nào về này?
Đến giờ thì tôi vẫn thích truyện tranh, nhưng tôi dần dà thì chuyển sang cái hướng là tôi thích tỉ mẩn vào những cái bức tranh hơn, nhưng tôi cũng không thích những bức tranh quá tĩnh và đứng độc lập, nên là tôi có xu hướng là vẽ các bức tranh mà có xu hướng xếp cạnh nhau và kể một cái tính truyện liên hoàn. Thì tôi nghĩ đây là một cái cách mà người xưa đã luôn làm, đấy là kể chuyện bằng tranh liên hoàn, chứ còn sau này mới tồn tại những cái tranh tồn tại độc lập riêng biệt. Thì tôi nghĩ là trong tương lai tôi sẽ tiếp tục sáng tác nhiều tác phẩm dựa trên cái lối kể bằng tranh liên hoàn.
I still love comics. I still love it very much, but I've grown to start being more interested in going into paying more attention to details in a certain painting nowadays. But I really enjoy the idea of drawing, telling a story by drawing sequential painting. I believe that since the olden days, people have always told story. There's already a tradition of telling stories through sequential paintings, and I think in the future I will continue to draw and tell stories this way.
Và kể bằng frame, và frame như kiểu comic thì lúc nào cũng thích hơn, vì trông sẽ nhiều cái tính hành động và nói chung là nó hấp dẫn về mặt thị giác. Cho nên là cho dù là tôi vẽ minh họa thì có xu hướng là tôi sẽ vẫn sử dụng các cái lối kể tương tự. Mà trong cuốn cổ tích này thì có một cái chuyện gần với cái kiểu kể đó nhất, thì đấy là chuyện con mụ lương.
And you know, comic storytelling is drawn frame by frame. There's a lot of action in there, and it's always very exciting. And even though I'm illustrating, I use a lot of storytelling techniques borrowed from comics. In this collection in particular, there's a story called Madame Jeet that the way I drew it borrows a lot of techniques from comic.
We might have time for one more question. Anyone's brave enough to raise their hand and pose? Yes, okay. Final one.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the Museum of the Whole for organizing this event. It's really great. And I'm a painter myself, so I want to ask something more about the technical way that you paint. More like this paper, because it's the first time I hear of this. And normally, the paper like the Zon, the Zan, the Chu is way more popular. And as you can see from your work, it's a very versatile material, and it can affect a lot of other materials. So can you tell me more about this paper, where it's from, and how you decided to use it? Thank you.
Anh hiểu đúng không? Hay là có cái
Em cứ dịch.
bạn ấy cũng là họa sĩ, Bạn ấy rất tò mò về cái quá trình anh vẽ, đặc biệt là về cái loại giấy này. Tại vì bình thường ở Việt Nam thì cái loại giấy như là giấy gió, giấy chuối, giấy gì đó nữa mà em không biết tên, vẫn thường thấy thông dụng hơn. Thì anh có thể giải thích cho bạn ấy thêm về cái loại giấy này, anh tìm thấy nó ở đâu và cái quá trình sử dụng nó như thế nào?
Về việc sử dụng loại giấy này thì thật ra nó là duyên. Lúc đấy tôi đang chơi với cái loại này và tôi thấy nó khá là hay. Đây là loại giấy washi mà bản thân nó đã có màu, nó có những màu sắc khác nhau. Và khi mà tô lên thì bản thân màu sắc của giấy ảnh hưởng ngược lại với màu sắc mà tôi vẽ lên. Nên nó không nó thường không bao giờ nó giống hệt như là cái ý đồ ban đầu. Nên khi vẽ bằng loại giấy này mình cần một cái sự thả lỏng, không thể quá kiểm soát cái vật liệu của mình, mà như thế thì nó cũng hợp với cái dự án này hơn. Mọi thứ nó đều xảy ra rất là ngẫu nhiên. Như tôi nói là khi mà vẽ bộ này thì thường tôi nghĩ là không phải là tôi kiểm soát mà là màu sắc hay là cái gì đó đã kiểm soát tôi dẫn dắt để vẽ ra những bức tranh này.
So it is with this type of paper, it was a chance encounter. I was playing with it, and this paper is washi paper. It has color on its own. So the color of the paper impacts a lot on the image that you draw itself. And as I mentioned, with this, it's very fitting, this project, because when you draw on this paper, you have to have a sense of letting go. You can't try to control what you're drawing too much. And it fits with this project because, I'm not trying to control what I'm drawing. The colors itself was what led the way.
Thank you so much for that question. Just looking at time, I'm just going to wrap things up. So thank you so much for sharing everything you've shared. We could literally talk for hours. And thank you for your time to come from the sun and come and experience this with us. Just a couple of things. So these 6 only prints will be up for auction. So if you want to know how to bid on it, please look for updates on @MajorBooksUK on Instagram. We do have Jeet here, so I see some of you have already bought the books. And if you want a special signing, he will be outside just at the end of this chat, so you can get an exclusive signing. And Major Books do translate and publish and sell other books. I highly recommend buying a bundle because they're really worth it. And this exhibition does run until July 26th, but we've got 4 more events. So we've got 2 more panel discussions to really delve into folktales in general and translations and some other people and experts on the team. And we also have the 2 workshops I mentioned, which Jeet will lead. So please go on the museum's website and book. It is free and in limited spaces. We have opened 5 more spots for the adult one. So it's sold out at the moment, but we've opened up 5 more because Jeet's really kind to say, yeah, let's bring more people in. And that's it from me. So thank you, everyone. That's not it from me, I'm sorry. So we've got half an hour, 25 minutes until we have to leave the space. So the museum closes at 5. If we can start to leave the museum around 5 and head to Kingsland Road to Sen Viet. So those of you who have actually booked with us, you should have a token. If you don't have a token, that's what's going to admit you into the restaurant because we're at full capacity. So please come see myself and Anne. And do we have loads left? 8. Okay, so I've got like about 11. So if you haven't booked and it hasn't been taken, come to me. There'll be food and you're admitted to 1 drink. So it's Sen Viet, the vegan restaurant on Kingsland Road. Please go and enjoy the rest of the exhibition. Thank you.